Hello friends, today we will discuss about sociological theories of power, under which first we will study about Weberian perspective of power. So let us study now. Max Weber has defined power as the chance of a man or a number of men to realize their own will in a communal action. Here communal means community based action, even against the resistance of others who are participating in the action. So power is therefore an aspect of social relationship. An individual or group do not hold power in isolation. They hold it in relations to others. Power is therefore power over others. Weber's definition of power implies that those who hold power do so at the expense of others. It suggests that there is fixed amount of power, and therefore if some holds power, then at the expense of others. This is called constant sum concept of power. So Weber is talking about constant sum concept of power on same line of that of Marx concept. We will discuss later about Marx perspective of power. Now Weber differentiated between two forms of power. First one is authority and second one is coercion. Authority is that form of power which is accepted as legitimate. So we have to use the term legitimate. That is as right and just. Weber's discussion of power focus on distinguishing between three ideal type of authority. First one is traditional, second one is charismatic, and third is rational legal authority. For example, we have already covered these three types of authority under Max Weber chapter. Now, for example, in Indian society, we accept that Parliament has a right to make law. That is why Parliament is regarded as legitimate authority. Coercion is that form of power which is not regarded as legitimate by those who subject to it. A number of sociologists developed and depended upon the zero-sum concept of power given by Max Weber. The conflict perspective of power, Marxian perspective, is also similar to Weberian perspective at theoretical level. Now, what Robert Dahl has said about, Robert Dahl defined power as A has power over B to the extent that he can get B to do something which B otherwise would not do. So this definition is also on the line of Max Weber's definition. Now what Edward Sells has said, a person has power over other to the extent that he can change the behavior of others in accordance with his own intention. So it is also on the same line that of Max. Now let us see what Stephen Lukes has said about the power. So he has talked about three dimensions of power. First dimension, power in decision making. It refers to power in terms of the ability to go one's own way in observable conflict. Power to influence decision in the face of conflicting view or interest. Here, where different individuals or group express different policy preferences and influence the making of decisions over various issues. For example, if a government has followed the policies advocated by the trade union, it means that trade unions have the power. Second dimension is power to limit the alternatives available to others. Power to control what issues are decided upon. That is, groups or individuals with power can limit the alternatives available to others. Power may be used to prevent certain issues from being discussed. or decisions about them for being taken. For example, repeal of Farm Bill by Indian government due to the protest by farmers organizations. Now, third dimension, power to shape the desire. The market forces, what they are doing in capitalistic society, or we can say market economy. The ability to manipulate the wishes and desires of the others. For example, the role of mass media in influencing the consumption pattern of masses. So, Luke's definition of power, what exactly it is? A exercises power over B when A affects B in a manner contrary to B's interest. Thus, according to Luke, the power is exercised over those who are harmed by its use, whether they are aware they are being harmed or not. Now comes what we have discussed till now, the basically Weberian concept and those and others, those who have defined on the same line. Now let us come to functionalist perspective of power. A major functionalist theorist is the Talcott-Parsons, as we know. So what he has said, Talcott-Parsons rejected the constant sum concept of power, that means Weberian perspective, and the view that power is employed in the furtherance of sectional interest, rather than seeing power as a something which some hold at the expense of others. Parsons regards it as something possessed by society as a whole. Now, according to Parsons, power is the capacity to mobilize resources of society for attainment of goal for which a general commitment has been made. Thus, the amount of power in a society is measured by the degree to which the collective goals are realized. Thus, the greater the efficiency of society or social system for achieving the goals defined by its member, the more power exists in the society. This view is known as the variable sum concept of power, as power in society is not fixed or constant. Instead, it can increase or decrease. So, this is the perspective of Talcott-Parsons. Parsons regards power differentials as necessary for the effective pursuit of collective goals. If members of society pool their efforts and resources, they are more likely to realize their shared goals than if they operate as individuals. So here Parsons is talking about collective effort. Cooperation on a large scale requires organization and direction, which necessitates positions of command. Therefore, some are granted the power to direct others, and this power takes the form of authority. It is regarded as legitimate as it is seen to further collective goals. Now, what is criticism is? Many sociologists have argued that Parsons has failed to appreciate that power is frequently used to further sectional interest rather than to benefit society as a whole. We can think and add more points like what is happening in India. So we have to think and accordingly add more points. Now let us come to liberal perspective of power. So what is the liberal perspective? The liberal theory of power dates back to the writings of the social contract theorists such as Hobbes and Locke. These thinkers argued that society had risen out of the voluntary agreement or social contract made by individuals who recognized that only the establishment of sovereign power could safeguard them from insecurity and disorder from within and without. So, here state is a neutral arbiter amongst competing groups, individual in society capable of protecting its citizens from the encroachment. So here neutral arbiter states. The state is therefore a neutral entity acting in the interest of public interest. The liberal theory has been elaborated by modern writers into pluralistic theory of state. So basically a pluralist theory of state is nothing but liberal perspective. Pluralist theory argues that political power is dispersed among the wide variety of social groups rather than an elite of ruling class. It is decentralized, widely shared, diffused, and fragmented, deriving from many sources. Arnold Roche, Robert Dahl, Talcott Parsons, and Neil J. Schmelzer are some of the key pluralist theorists. So it is decentralized, widely shared, diffused, and fragmented, derived from many sources. Arnold Roche, Robert Dahl, Talcott Parsons, and Neil J. Schmelzer are some of the key pluralistic theorists. Now, according to pluralist perspective, competition between two or more political parties is an essential feature of representative government. According to them, interest groups and pressure groups representing various interests play a major role in affecting the decision-making process of states. Pluralists believe that a rough equality exists among organized group and interest in that each enjoys some measure of access to government, and government is prepared to listen impartially to all. They claim that competitions for office between political parties provide the electorate, that means voters, with an opportunity to select its leaders and a means of influencing government policy. Pluralist theory explains the origin of liberal democratic state. For pluralists, state represents institutionalized power, an authority, and it is in the supreme guardian of representative democracy in the modern society. So these are the authority, central source of authority. The primary task of state is to balance the interest of multitudes of competing groups, represents interest of society as a whole, and coordinating other major institutions. They, pluralists, view the state itself as a set of competing and conflicting institutions rather than a monolithic entity which exerts its power over the rest of the society. Now, what is classic pluralism? Pluralism as a theory claims to explain the nature and distribution of power in Western democratic society. Classic pluralism, the original form of this perspective, that means pluralistic perspective, believes that power ultimately derives from the population as a whole. Classic pluralists accept that the government and state in a Western democracy act in the interest of the society and according to the wishes of the members. Upon the acceptance and cooperation of the population. However, pluralists accept the constant sum concept of power. Here, pluralists accept the constant sum concept of power. They deny that democratic society have an all-embracing value consensus. They do not accept that members of society share common interest or value in relation to every issue. So conflict will be always there. They are also accepting. They believe industrial society is increasingly differentiated into a variety of social groups and sectional interests. And with the increasing specialized division of labor, the number and diversity of occupational groups steadily grow. and these groups may put conflicting requests to the government. However, they deny that any single group dominates. To pluralist, state is seen as an honest broker that takes account of all the conflicting interests of different sections of society. Honest broker, state is an honest broker. Pluralists argue that every group over a period of time has its interest reflected in government decisions, but because of the divisions within society, it is not possible for the state to satisfy everyone all the time. As Raymond Aron says, government is a business of compromise. In Who Governs, Robert Dahl investigated local politics in New Haven, Connecticut, USA, which proved that major decisions were taken in consultation with various interest groups and policies acceptable to all parties concerned were arrived at. A study by Wayne Grant and David Mars on pressure groups' influence in Britain also found the same. Now let us critically evaluate the pluralistic theory. Pluralists ignore the possibility that some have the power to prevent certain issues from reaching to the point of decision. As a result of this non-decision making, only safe decisions may be taken, decisions that do not fundamentally alter the basic structure of capitalist society. Even interest groups may influence safe decisions, and this fosters the illusion of real participation and helps to create the myth that society is democratic. Pluralists also do not take account of the possibility that the preferences expressed by the majority might themselves have been manipulated by those with real power. For example, those who control media or the education system can play a part in shaping individuals' attitude and opinion. Westergaard and Ressler argued that power is only visible through its consequences. For example, many schemes for the poor but little redistribution of wealth has been seen and income inequality is on the rise. So power in which hand can be seen easily by its consequences. More poverty in a society, that and inequality, that means power is highly concentrated in the hands of few. So for example, many schemes for the poor, for example in India there are many schemes for the poor, but the little redistribution of wealth has been seen and income inequality on the rise. So in India, actually power is concentrated in the hand of few. That's why too much poverty there. We can say that. Some evidence also suggests that some interest groups have more influence over government decision than others. Decision making does not always appear to support the view that power is equally distributed among all groups in society. Also, not all sections of the society are represented by group which has any power. Example, unemployed, refugees, asylum seekers. So it's all about that. In the next lecture we will discuss about Marxian theory of power. Okay, thank you very much.